Great. Well, thank you, Tony Juniper, for agreeing to this interview. We're here at Clarence House in London, and we're at the headquarters of the Prince's Rainforest project, and we're talking forests. We're looking at what's happening with the world's forests, what has been happening, what progress or lack of progress has been happening in the last 15 to 20 years or so. And then we're looking at some critical negotiations that seem to be coming to a head toward the end of this year that the Prince's Rainforest project is involved in. So thank you, Mr. Juniper.
My pleasure.
And can we start by looking at the global dialogue on forests and what it has achieved or what it perhaps hasn't achieved?
So this has been a very active arena on the international agenda over the last 15, 20 years, actually going back longer than that. The question of how to conserve forests and tropical forests in particular being high there, not only as an international political issue but also one of grave public concern, and this became one of the iconic phrases of the environmental movement in recent years has been save the rainforests, and so it's kind of located beyond the technical domains of international treaties. If you look back over recent years, there's a couple of big attempts that have been tried involving really quite substantial sums of money, and I guess probably the biggest would be the Tropical Forestry Action Plan, launched in the late 1980s, a coalition of international development agencies working with donor countries like the UK, US, Germany, France and others to try and coordinate the response that some of them were individually trying to put together to slow down deforestation by putting all of their money together and trying to come up with plans that they could all contribute to rather than having them doing different things. A very good idea in principle, but unfortunately in practice it didn't work for all sorts of different reasons, not least because the priorities being pursued in that programme weren't those of the developing countries or the people who lived in the forest. It was very much the priorities of the donor community that were being put forward. So instead of land reform in developing countries, a lot of the emphasis was going on industrial logging and trying to make that a bit more sustainable. Not a negative aim in itself, but actually not the right priority given what was going on at the time, and indeed what's still the case today. Another issue was linked to resources being put into machinery and equipment that actually made the problem worse. And, the mantra might have been sustainable forest management, but actually what happened was just increasing the capacity to do the logging even more quickly in some countries. So that didn't work, and there's been various other approaches and initiatives. The International Tropical Timber Organisation's target to achieve sustainable forest management by 2000, that obviously didn't work in terms of what continues to be the case right across the tropical countries, and various negotiations going on in the UN that were kicked off before the Rio summit in 1992 and which continue to this day and which still haven't led to any decisive breakthrough in terms of being able to slow down deforestation. And if you look at the figures today in terms of what's going on in Borneo and Sumatra and parts of Latin America and Africa, you realise that those laudable efforts kicked off in the late 1980s, they haven't yet done what's needed.